Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the series. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the interviews that we put out every single week, new and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I have once again got one of my all-time favorites, one of the greatest of all time, the one and only Sheryl Crow. Hello.
Hi. Wow, what a nice intro.
Oh, I could just lay it on too. That was the
Yeah.
condensed, easy version right there. It's so great to talk to you again. I was thinking just recently that I probably had you on my little series here almost more than any of the artists. I think last year was the only year that we haven't had an interview in since we started doing these.
I was
however
so
many years
busy
ago.
last year, Kyle. I couldn't have even squeezed you in. No, I'm kidding. I mean, honestly, the last 2 years have felt like a giant, just smudge mark. I can't even put it all together. It seems so weird, but we did wind up going back to work a little bit in the fall, and I started to feel like a normal person again. So
It's good to hear. Well, we know that you've been busy too, not just with music, but of course, with the subject at hand, this fantastic documentary that's just come out called Sheryl, which I think we just instantly devoured over here, me and my wife, watching this thing. And it's great. It's great for you to tell the story, the whole story, as you've, I wouldn't want to say dodged over the years. You've been telling your story, at least, through the years, but what made this the time, as that question goes, to finally put it kind of encapsulated like this?
well, my manager and Van Toffler, who Van I've known for years, probably as long as Scooter, had interest from Showtime to produce a documentary. And I love documentaries. I just didn't see myself doing one because I felt like, well, I got a lot of years ahead of me. I'm not on my way out, I hope. And that's kind of what I always thought about documentaries. But, kind of once I settled in with the idea, there are lots of, there's a world of living there that I've never told anyone. That the only people that have been around for the whole thing have been my managers and my family and friends who've been there for the whole time. And it just felt like it was a story worth telling. I think the things that I have gone through that have been challenges are not unlike what a lot of women have gone through, particularly in the music business. And maybe are still going through, but it's a little bit different now that we've created a safe place for women to, to speak their truth, but also, getting older in the business and even talking about some of the, the challenges I've had with having real low lows and real high highs, however you want to define that, depression, manic depression, however you define the mental illness aspect. And I guess I have felt like, for me at this stage, I love my life. I love making music, and to paint a picture of the person as opposed to the well-known music star. It just seemed maybe it was a good time to do it.
Yeah, that's got to be an interesting too, though. I mean, because there's so much story to tell. It's your life. It's all of your life too. Is there a choice when you have to figure out what the narrative is? Because I'm only thinking in comparison, you can do a documentary that just dives into the album and is a complete album, album by album thing. And then you've got the personal life story. Is there a point where you have to say, this is the story I want to tell, this version?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things when they approached me about doing this, I was just like, look, I just don't want to do a recap of awards and big performances. And I just wasn't interested in doing, an EPK basically. I was more interested in telling the story about a person and why a person would ever want to get into lifting their voice into the fray. There are a lot of great musicians out there and a lot of great songwriters and a lot of amazing singers that don't ever make it as far as I've made it. And there's something along the way that makes you keep keeping on. And I guess that was sort of what the exploration was. The other thing for me was that I had a great director that Scooter and I chose, in Amy Scott, who had done the Hal Ashby documentary. And I loved it. I felt like her artistic choices were really smart. And I felt safe in having her and her crew basically in going through, you know, years and years and years of footage and interviews and life stuff of them sort of deciding what the story to be told should be. And I gave up some of the creative freedom in that. And I do feel good about it. I mean, there's probably 7 or 8 other documentaries on the cutting room floor. There are things I wish would have been in it, but at the end of the day, you know, you make a documentary that's 2 hours long and people lose interest. So they were strict about, you know, right at 1:30, or, you know, right at 90 minutes or 98 minutes or whatever. And I feel good about it, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I don't sit around and watch it either. You know, I watched it like the first time they sent it to me. I made a couple of things that I was like, I wish this was in it. It couldn't happen. And then I watched it at South by Southwest. And then I was like, okay. You know, it's like taking your clothes off or something. It's like, oh, can I put my clothes back on now?
I mean, the Beatles got away with 9 hours on one album documentary right there. So it's, you know,
Yes, they were the Beatles. The fact that you would even put me in the same sentence with the Beatles is, I mean, I think that's a wrap. Thanks, Kyle. It's been great talking with you.
you know what the Beatles didn't have? And I thought I knew a lot about your career. The Beatles didn't have cop rock. I'll say that. So it's
they did not have cop rock. And I think that was their shortcoming. I mean, that was really, I think, where they, I don't know, they didn't measure quite as highly as I did on the barometer of achievements.
Seriously, that was such a fun moment because I know about cop rock. I remember cop rock.
It's shocking that show isn't still on. I mean, it's such a great idea, a musical detective show.
You know, there's always reboots. It's never too late.
Yes.
Executive produce this, Sheryl. Come on.
It was Stephen Bochco. I mean, for crying out loud, it's like, I don't know. I think he was smoking some serious weed when he came up with that idea.
And all the executives went, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's greenlight this thing.
Hey, Stephen thinks it's a great idea. Let's do it.
That was fun. You do have those moments in there. But like you said, I know there was lots that you couldn't be told again because you are doing this in an hour and a half. Some points that I was curious about, like there was an album before Tuesday Night, of course, the Fabled Songs, or however I don't know if you want to call it the album. Was that part of the story that you wanted to tell? Because that couldn't exactly fit in there too. Like there's a song on Point Break soundtrack. Yeah,
I mean, there's a song on the Point Break soundtrack, and some of those songs were covered. Like one was covered by Tina Turner, one was covered Celine Dion, one was covered by who else? I mean, I can't even remember who all did songs on it. Oh, Winona. Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. I mean, there's so much stuff. Like even, you know, the amount of time that Don Henley and I spent on Capitol Hill fighting for artists' rights. There's so many things along the way. But, you know, I don't know. I think the real story was more about the person and maybe less about all of the events along the way. But yeah, you know, I snuck into a Sting album release party with my demo tape and gave it to Hugh Padgham. And there you go. You know, he signed me, great producer. Unfortunately, my demo was made on what is now the equivalency of Pro Tools. It was made on Performer program, and it was very quantized and very slick sounding. And when we finished it, it did sound quite a lot like my demos and quite a lot like the Sting record. And I just felt like I don't know how to follow this up. But if it comes out, if I do what I want to do, then people are going to go, well, what? You know, so, you know, it was an expensive lesson.
That led to a classic album.
Yeah, you know, yes, it did.
You know, generation defining record right there. And I want to quickly just hit, you know, because you also put out the soundtrack for this, which is such a great collection of songs. I was happy to see Love Is a Good Thing on here. Personally, that one gets a lot of play around our house. Oh, this might be too specific of a question right here, but that scream that you do in Love Is a Good Thing after the breakdown happens, was that inspired by anything? Because So that reminds me, like Joan Jett's Howl, that kind of, she took it from Mark Boland, and it's just such a good moment.
I took mine from David Lee Roth. No, I'm kidding. I always wonder how David Lee Roth does that thing that he does. But no, I don't know. You know, it's that's one of those songs that I don't have that many songs that I feel this way about, but I wish I could go back and produce that song again, because I would do it differently. I think I'd probably leave the scream, but who knows? I don't know where those things come from.
Great moment.
Cigarettes.
It's a great moment. A lot of the story is told, of course, about what you're going through at Come On, Come On, which just happens to be the 20th anniversary year right now for that record.
Oh
I've gone back and
crazy.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just going to remind you of all of those things. That's that's what I do.
Yes.
But I went back and listened to that one recently and just sort of fell in love with it again. But it's interesting as you're talking about it in the documentary, because you have one of your poppiest albums, as I understand, during basically a really depressed, I don't know if you want to say your most depressed time, but a very dark time. Does that affect, you know, how you hear those songs? Because you obviously sort of probably know how other people hear those songs, you know, a Soak Up the Sun type of thing. But for you, knowing where they come from, does that change how you hear them even today?
Not so much anymore, but there was a period where I could hear the machinations that went into making that record. And to me, it sounded like a record that was filled with toil and you know, forcing something. And I don't hear it so much like that, although I don't listen to my music. But when I do hear something at Home Depot or Whole Foods, which is where my music generally gets played, thank God, I don't have that body reaction to it anymore. And Soak Up the Sun was a little bit of an anomaly because I was really sick with the flu when we wrote it. So it was all just part of the experience of being just, you know, down. And it was a bright moment. And the fact that people, and it was a very sardonic song, you know, it was sort of my looking at MTV and seeing all this incredible bling and everything was about money and just like, well, what are we doing? I mean, the earth is gonna blow up from the heat of the sun, and everything we're portraying is, you know, money. But I have a different relationship to all the songs now that I'm older. You know, there's some that I enjoy playing because they meant so much to me, like Weather Channel and like River Wide, and those were really soul bearing songs. And even Favorite Mistake was, although it was a pop song, it was so you know, so much a storyteller song from what I was going through. So there's great songs on every record that never get played, but that I enjoy playing. And then there are the big pop hits that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that's interesting hearing you talk about Soak Up the Sun like that. Like I was thinking about You're an Original also on that record right there, which sort of takes that. I feel like it takes that same kind of tone, like you know, especially at that time when I don't know, pop singers seem like a dime a dozen. You know, it's, I don't know if it was so much a comment on that, but it's definitely how I heard it. That's it was fun songs, but
that song was, you know, and I'm not typically like a bitter person, but there's a lot of irony on that record. You know, I was getting ready to turn 40. I Owen and I had just split. I was not a mom. You know, I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm not going to get to be a mom. I'm turning 40. And every girl on the radio or MTV and VH1 is like 12, you know, and they all sound the same and they all look the same. And where do I fit in? And that was You're an Original, you know, so while it sounds like a happy song and, you know, real kick ass, it's sort of a documentary on how I was feeling.
Yeah. Well, I'll end this album with just saying that I think Safe and Sound should still be played on every grocery store and radio station across the world. I think it's one of the greatest songs you've ever written. I love it. It's
you Kyle, that's great.
Gives me the goosebumps every time. It really does.
Wow.
And so again, because of time constraints, the documentary, there is sort of a section that doesn't get to be told. There are albums that don't get to have that life right there.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious, when we talk about Wildflowers, Detours, Feels Like Home. If there were a sequel to this documentary, what is the narrative of the late O's, the late 2000s and the 2010s as far as the music is concerned? Like what would be the narrative for your life at that point?
I mean, I sound like Joe Biden a little bit. That was like a period of building back, building back better. I especially the Detours record, I really reevaluated where I fit into the picture of my life. And that was the result of my life really shifting from being unengaged and being diagnosed with breast cancer to taking time away from music as being the salve or the fixer or the go-to, and adopting Wyatt. And then there was a moment where I felt like opening my mouth again. And those records, although they weren't commercially successful, have some of my favorite songs on them. And they're more introspective. The Wildflower record was the product of being in a relationship and being really lonely, which was before cancer. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of sort of digging deep on that record as well, especially songs like, Letter to God.
Letter to God. I was going to bring that. Yeah, that's.
It's different when you're a faithful or at least a spiritual person to be with someone who doesn't have any spiritual leanings at all. So that was sort of. There's a lot of stuff on there where I hear myself searching for answers on those three records specifically, and then the country record, Feels Like Home. I mean, it's a great exercise in songwriting, but just okay.
You've got a song with like 7 million streams on that record, so it's still finding its
what was
people
it
out there. Easy, is that right? Easy.
Oh, Easy. Okay, yeah. I mean, there's some great crafted songs on there, and it was a great experience for me to sit in a room with other songwriters and up my game. But the direct reaction to that was the Be Myself record, which is, I feel like that's the sister record to my second record, Sheryl Crow, because it's more of a, okay, let me get back to who I am and be who I am. And that felt so great.
And that's the full circle of when we started doing these interviews too, with Be Myself. So
yes, it is.
That's a nice spot to do this. I know we're running a little short on time here. I'll only bring up that you also have 3 new recordings on this soundtrack. I've enjoyed Playing Forever so much on FBK over here. That's just such a beautiful song and still the same.
Thank you.
With the Stones' Live With Me, doing the new version of that one. And I guess, like, what was it, those 3 songs? Because, okay, we've got the career retrospective here, and here's the new material.
Yeah. I mean, it's daunting to, it's how I felt when we put out the Greatest Hits record. I'm like, how do you put new songs on a Greatest Hits? It's like, okay, here are the hits and 3 duds, or, for me, these 3 songs, particularly Forever, is my favorite song right now that I've ever written. And it is the direct result of a conversation with my teenager and talking about stress and anxiety and what all he and his friends are facing, things I never had to face when I was a kid. Am I going to lose somebody I love in a pandemic? Am I going to, is the world going to be able to sustain my children? And I mean, those are heady and scary things. And then compound that with social media and all that stuff. And just the idea of trying to remember to be in the moment, and that the greatest gift you can ever give anyone is being present with them. And so I love the song. Live With Me it's featured in the documentary as being the first song I ever played with the Rolling Stones, and to do a version of it and then to text Mick, which I still can't believe I have his phone number, and ask him to play harp on, and him turning around saying, yeah, send me the track. It's just really fun, and it's doing really well at rock radio, which is super cool. And then Still the Same is, I think being a mom and raising kids in this day and age and going, wow, people are so angry at each other and so so mad. And are we not willing to look at history to learn some of the lessons of where we're headed? And that's what it's about. It's really fun to write.
Yeah, they're great songs. I love all the songs that you always do. Do you know
Thank
what
you.
happens I mean, are there plans from here, or is this a year of touring? Do you know what you're doing musically next?
Well, we're doing a bunch of dates this summer. I'm working on doing, hopefully next year, doing some solo shows with some really cool production, and with it revolving around stories. Um, just little odds and ends, things that I want to do, want to accomplish. So other than that, that's it. I got to buy a new car.
It's the
I'm on a
important
wait list.
the important work right there.
I got to get rid of the minivan, Kyle. That she's got 170,000 miles on her. It's time for her to be put out to pasture.
Well, good luck. I know that's the most important thing on your plate
Those
right
are
now.
the
Good
pressing
luck.
things. Yes.
That's right. Congratulations on this, on a career that's worthy of such a great documentary and all the other things in it. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you about the music.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
You too.